So I have the Sixers, and I'm still scrambling to figure out like who I need to pick for the Sixers. I'm going to go. No one's going to like this, but I'm going to go with Danny Green. It's him or George Niang, just because George Niang is going to sling it when he's on the court, and there's just a ton of value in his doing that, specifically before James Harden came along. It's not Tyrese Maxey anymore, by the way. I hope that's a lack of options here. I know I had this discussion with some of our Discord members where Danny Green has looked washed on defense a lot this year. His 3-point shooting has been all over the place. He is shooting 37+% since the trade deadline. So there's that. His matchup difficulty on defense is still absolutely absurd. It is 92.2. He is spending nearly a quarter of his possessions guarding the other team's number one option still. That is a monstrous workload for someone who is not in his prime anymore. He's age 34 and he's going to turn 35 in June. And if you have someone, the gauge cannot be he didn't stop Trae Young in last year's playoffs that he was
right.
That's not sufficient enough to me. And I do think he's taken a step back. We've seen it in the way that Doc Rivers has handled his playing time. But if you're just going to have someone who's shooting 37.3% from three for the year, yeah, there's going to be some bad misses, but he's getting those up at 7.2 attempts per 36 minutes. And just another wing type body on a team that doesn't really have many of them, particularly ones who you can trust even a little bit from 3-point range. The idea that he can still come in, and if the other team's best player is a guard, or let's say highest volume player is a guard, that you can still have him chase around those players, there's value in that. And I also want to say it's not, I would never use this as like an MVP argument where it's Devin Booker or Chris Paul because the Suns have the most wins. There's a reason, though, that Danny Green is just always on these really good teams. The Sixers are better statistically at both ends this season when he's on the floor. And I do think a lot of that has to do with the quality of opponents he's facing. They're still one of the 4 best teams in the Eastern Conference. This predates James Harden's arrival. I know he's not playing as big of a role. He definitely looks slower on the defensive end. I actually feel like every time I watched him, I had to triple check his 3-point percentage on the year. And I was also breaking it up by months because I feel like whenever I watch the Sixers, I never see him hit a 3 that they always miss. So I get there's like this level of volatility to him. But like, even if you watch him in transition defensively, like he still tries to get after it there. So I'm going with Danny Green. The caveat here is I don't know that the Sixers really have like a great number of good options here for this exercise.
No, I think going with someone like Danny Green to the extent, and I agree, because you can't make the case for Niang in the same way you can for Green because the numbers just don't support it. But if you're looking for someone that's underrated, just pick the guy that's got maximum portability, the guy that fits on any team anywhere. Because sure, not the defender he was on like the 14-15 Spurs or 12-13 or whatever. But like he just fits anywhere. That's always super valuable. You don't have to change anything when Danny Green's on your team because he's just going to do all the stuff that nobody else wants to do, and he'll be in the right places and make shots. And not only is he always on really good teams, said really good teams are always better when he is playing. Because if you look back at every single year since 11-12, he's got a positive on-off differential, and some of them are enormous. So it again, just like, DeMar DeRozan always having negative ones didn't mean he was terrible necessarily. It meant something until the last year or two. Danny Green, when he is on the floor for a good team, so the bar is already high because in theory their backups are very good too, he makes them significantly better. So, and you would never think of him as this integral piece to winning, certainly not anymore. But I agree with you completely. I think Danny Green is like the only realistic choice on a good Sixers team.
And I kind of feel like he's just been there like for forever. And like maybe the difference is, I think the best way I could frame his defense is like you're probably you want to put him if there's like a bigger 3 who's just slower versus a point guard. You're going to want to put him on the bigger 3 now, where I feel like in years past, you would have wanted it to have been the point guard. And if you look it up, I think this is on record. Yes, he has spent, and this has to do a little bit with the Sixers personnel, obviously. He's guarding point guards 15.6% of the time. That's his lowest mark since 2013, 2014. So, but he's 34. So I'm just,
yeah. What do you want, people?
Yeah. So I feel like I had to be more impassioned about this election because I was waffling right up until I made it. But nonetheless, I'm still put Danny Green on my like the Knicks can sign Danny Green this offseason. That's all I'm saying. They're free.
That's all you're saying. Nothing wrong with that.